Hi guys, I'm Yenna, and this is everything I read in August 2021, the long-awaited month when my kid finally started in-person school, and I thought I'd have more time to read and make more videos, and of course, we all ended up getting COVID. We're all okay, don't worry, but that's why my voice sounds like this, FYI. I'll start with my favorite. I loved reading through this Vivienne Westwood Catwalk book. I'm so impressed by this series from Yale University Press. I learned so much about Dame Westwood, that she's always been a big reader, and her reading informs and influences her life and creative endeavors. The book goes through the evolution of the brand and just how many signature styles and techniques come from this one designer. I had no idea that there's a skirt inspired by Agatha Christie's Miss Marple. She combines historical, multicultural, avant-garde, and counterculture, all reflected through the prism of her British eye. During the 80s and 90s, she focused on culture and politics, and then 2000 and onwards, it shifted toward climate change and equality. I didn't even know that she started punk. I learned so much and had so many inspirations from this one fashion book. And I know it's because the source, Vivienne Westwood herself, is such a huge source of inspiration. A genuinely good person. And I can't not bring up my all-time favorite manga, Nana, and how big a fan the writer Yazawa must be to get every detail, every curve and shape so lovingly accurate. This book is definitely one of my all-time prized possessions. I casually read through Louise Bourgeois, An Unfolding Portrait by Deborah Y., published by MoMA in 2017. This is another inspiring book thanks to its genuine, authentic source. Deborah Y. spent decades working with Bourgeois through MoMA, developing a personal and business relationship to the point of Bourgeois gifting the museum her substantial print collection and an issue of every print that she made going forward until her death. I honestly wasn't too familiar with Louise Bourgeois and know nothing about printmaking, though I did see an exhibition of hers at LACMA many years ago and have owned a print of hers that I've since cherished. There was something non-linear, something ephemeral and hard to articulate about her work that I was drawn to, so I wanted to know more about where she came from, and this book was perfect for that. It goes over her personal history and exclusively her prints and books. She was a woman who suffered depression, anxiety, insomnia, later on agoraphobia, who spent decades of her working life being rejected by the New York art world because trends didn't go her direction. I couldn't help but find her very relatable in her struggle, very lovable in her determination, and though the book makes it very clear that she had moods and would frequently tell people to F off, back to relatability. Nevertheless, she persisted. She continued to live and be. There was a poem she wrote that I'll condense here. I have failed as a wife, as a woman, as a mother, as a hostess, as an artist, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister, and I am 47. I have not failed as a truth seeker. Powerful. Furthermore, the physical book itself, stunning. The red edging references her signature red ink, and the cataloging. Every detail is included. Love to see it. This is great. And on that opposite end, some not great books. De Gournay Hand-Painted Interiors by Claud Gurney was, though exquisitely beautiful, Pinterest pretty, a real dream for the coffee table, was pretty awful to read. I can only conclude that Gurney is just a terrible person. He talks about the beginning and success of his business, insists he's an opportunity giver and not an opportunist, and that he loves China and Chinese culture, exudes love and happiness and wants people to have good lives, that his wallpaper artisans are top-notch, every material used is of the finest quality, his clients all have the finest taste. Why did he write what's basically a press release when he could have written a book? This is essentially a giant catalog. He even positively cites The Great Gatsby and calls women the gentle sex. Ew. I don't know what I was expecting or why I'm surprised, but that was my reading experience for this book. If you're into it, then link to a gorgeous house and garden vid of a de Gournay wallpapered home in the description box below for your viewing pleasure. The other huge disappointment is this New York Times Explorer 100 Trips Around the World. Look, They got me. I saw it at Costco. I'm a sucker for pretty travel books. I got it to, I guess, travel vicariously through the eyes of the New York Times travel staff until I actually read through the book and realized what that meant. It is unbearably white and elitist, and the majority of the destinations are North American and European. I think the target demographic for this book is the coastal elite who seeks the lesser-known offbeat track, a rustic adventure free from the tyranny of screens and phones, with the budget of a retired wealthy boomer, but the snide sarcasm of a Gen X. That could also be family-friendly, as several journeys describe having their young children in tow. Reading each entry on its own isn't that bad. It's when you take it as a whole and see that the vast majority of the writing staff is white and all of the photos, while very natural and not Instagrammy, thank God, depict people of color at work or in service to the white people who are at play in leisure. Was there a city I saw that I thought, ooh, love to go there someday? Yes. But some of the most egregious entries are for St. John, Canada, Palawan in the Philippines, calling the U.S. National Parks designer, and too packed with international crowds, and of course, completely excluding South Korea. So this is dead to me. At best, this seems like a guidebook for where the privileged like to go and do, and I look forward to bringing my POC family with me on future vacations. I decided to try reading the works of Rivka Galchen since she has a new hyped book coming out. I started with American Innovations, her collection of short stories, and it was great. Her voice is unique, concise, sharp, sterile. Each story was like a surgical procedure where there's a definite obfuscation that must be found and neatly removed, only to discover greater obfuscation. It reduces people to containers of sexual possibility. And they crack deliciously, and I think about macadamias. And then I tackled Atmospheric Disturbances, her debut novel, and I slogged through. I couldn't get into the story, and I only managed to finish from the strength of her odd and unique pairings. A death threat with beautiful illustrations. Crying can be like squeezing the pus out of gluteal abscesses. To an extent, this novel felt like a collection of observations, a mint-pitched voice. I had my office carpeted in pale blue because it is one of the few colors that are masculine and feminine at once. I wonder if she ate a lot of cookies while writing this. They're frequently mentioned. Another slim novel I'm sorry to say I slog through is Troubling Love by Elena Ferrante. It's almost like the movie Memento, where the storyline jumps in and out from the protagonist Delia's timeline to her mother's timeline, and the story opens on her mother's death, a possible murder that Delia is investigating. It's nice to know that in every Elena Ferrante story, you are guaranteed a torrent of emotions, significant betrayal, a character futilely running away from her Neapolitan childhood, and a shocking twist executed with sharp timing that will elicit a gasp. The Lost Daughter is much better. I was immediately drawn into the story. The thing I appreciate most about Ferrante's writing is how utterly relatable she is, told very simply, outright bluntly, with no sugarcoating. No one depended anymore on my care, and finally, even I was no longer a burden to myself. They were just like the relations from whom I had fled as a girl. I couldn't bear them, and yet they held me tight. I had them all inside me. It will be Maggie Gyllenhaal's directorial debut coming on Netflix in January, and I am so pumped for it. But my absolute favorite of the three is The Days of Abandonment. I had feelings while reading this. Palpable fury. Women have to endure so many indignities and humiliation. The story is essentially about a woman whose husband leaves her and their two children abruptly for a younger woman. This is a work of fiction, but obviously everyone knows this story from reality all too well. I thought about my mom's friends and family whose husbands had left them, and I can't imagine their pain or what that period of struggle they went through to accept their new lives and rebuild must have been like. Bear in mind, this is Italy during the 80s, 90s, when it's very uncommon for a woman to be a single mom, and the burden and humility and label of failure is on her. when women thus far have been raised to grow up to be good wives and mothers only for their name, their title, their value, to be imperiously taken away. The woman lost everything, even her name. For everyone, she became the Poverella, that poor woman. This is excellent. Assembly by Natasha Brown is getting a lot of buzz, and justifiably so. Very slim, a fast read, but incendiary and powerful, like a shank. Every page describes an affront, a microaggression, questioning the capitalist racial power hierarchy. This reminds me of the series Industry, where you have that assimilation and class struggles. But I felt sick of reaching, enduring, of the ascent. I can practically feel the anxiety diarrhea. I think this is going to be a future classic. And finally, I fell back on nostalgic rereads of manga from my youth. I read Gokinjo Monogatari online, and I'm happy to say it is still very fun, very cute, very wholesome. It came out in 1995, 98, and I read it in high school when I wanted to be a fashion designer like Mikako, who is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love how she's self-aware of her hardness and stubbornness, but it's all in service to staying resolved and disciplined in her determination to achieve her goals. It is downright inspiring. And I love the group dynamics between the school kids and the neighborhood adults and how loving and supportive they are and learn off of each other to grow into better human beings. The best part is arguably the last chapter, where the kids have grown into young adults and it starts to follow their children's coming of age stories, leading into Paradise Kiss, which came out in 1999 to 2003. Even though they're two separate stories, I think of them as one and merely a continuation as it involves much of the same characters, just shuffling the leading protagonist. I personally don't love Yukari and prefer the characters in Gokinjo, but I identify with the storyline more. It's like a time capsule of my youth with Miwako's sticker diary, high school academic pressure, finding your people and baring your soul to them for the first time, toxic fuckboys who manipulate you and you know it's a bad idea, but you're only thinking about all the fun you're having. And George's cologne must be Tom Ford Black Orchid. George is the embodiment of Tom Ford aesthetics. Since the 90s aughts were some toxic times, there's quite a bit of homophobia, othering, debilitating fear of being yourself. But they say that the favorites of your youth will remain your favorites forever. And every single reread, I shiver at Yukari's first modeling gig and cry like a baby at the climactic end when George leaves his parting gift. I love this so much, and I have a healthy stack going for my September TBR, but may need to include a Nana reread. That's everything I read in August 2021. It was a bumpy month with a lot going on, and I'm grateful for the stories I held with me. I hope your reading month was memorable, and as always, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Bye.